Hey, 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 everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to the stream. I am having a really great day. And the main reason for that is because 1 freaking week from today, 7 days, that's it, 1 week from right now, my book will be on shelves in bookstores and available for purchase. It already is available for pre-orders everywhere, but it's like out 1 week from today. It is crazy to me that we are already here. I started writing this book at the end of 2022. I signed my contract with my publishers at the end of 2022. So it's like wild to me that we're already here. I have been treating this as a labor of freaking love for so long, and I'm so excited for you guys to have a chance to read my new book. So The End of the Alphabet is hitting shelves exactly a week from today. Please, 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 if you guys haven't already, do me a huge favor and pre-order this book. We want to shatter everyone's expectations of who our generation is, of who we're growing up to be, and of what our values are. I'm dropping the link right now just in case you guys haven't already pre-ordered in the chat on Instagram. We can't do links in the chat, but you guys can find this on my stories or in my bio literally any day. Thank you guys for all of you who have already pre-ordered. You guys are amazing. It's also a pretty monumental day because it's an anniversary of something. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But if you guys clicked into the stream because of the title, we are going to get to our biggest story of the stream today. In just a couple of minutes. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, have announced that they are going to start targeting video gamers and spying on you guys while we're playing video games because they're trying to combat extremism and save America, apparently. So trust me, we're going to get into all of the meat and potatoes of that. But I would be remiss if we didn't start by acknowledging that today, on March 12th, 4 years ago, COVID was declared a global pandemic. 4 freaking years ago. I was in graduate school at the time. I was studying biomedical sciences, policy, and advocacy at Georgetown University and taking classes from some of the top people at the World Health Organization and at the CDC and several other areas of the US government. And it was fascinating at the time being told something in my class on, I don't know, global health law for the next week, that same person to go on international television and say something completely the opposite. So the scientist in me will never forget that period of time. All it took was 4 years for the mainstream media to tell you on March 1st, 2024, just shy of 4 years exactly to the day later, it's official. We can pretty much treat COVID like the flu now. Yeah, well, that's been a fun ride. The last 4 years have been a very fun ride. And I will never forget this week, 4 years ago, how confusing it was for everybody. Like my grad school said, don't come back to Washington, D.C., please. We don't want you here. The government is telling us to tell you not to come back. Everybody got 2 weeks of extended vacation, spring break, coronacation. We called it way back when. TikTok dances were like brand new. Everyone was hanging out at home in their sweats all day. Simpler times. And look how much the world has changed. So happy coronaversary. 4 years ago today, with COVID being declared a global pandemic, that now it's confirmed by the mainstream media, we can just treat like the flu. You guys, before we jump into our insane gaming story with the FBI targeting gamers as extremists, let me know if you are a first-time viewer and introduce yourself to us in the live chat because we want to get to know you just as much as you guys want to hear from me. We're going to say hi to a few people to kick off the stream today. Starting over on Rumble today, my Quilwin is here and Old Man Trucker is watching. Over on YouTube, we've got Ray, Total Package, Jury Master. We've got Delane Thomas, MAGA, and Svelter tuning in our chat. Good to see you guys. Over on Locals, we've got Alex, Nitty Witty, Red 4, Sabina, and more tuning in. I love seeing you guys over there. You guys are our diehard regular fans over on Locals. On Instagram, We've got Sully watching in Missouri. Jansen says, I'm new. We've got John watching in Ecuador. Frank is tuning in. Hey guys, so glad you're here. Bramble's watching from New Zealand, the one place I would like genuinely move to tomorrow. I love your country. We've got people watching in Canada, Oregon, Louisiana, all over the world. Italy, I will be there later this year, so very exciting. We've got Oscar watching in California, Arizona, New Jersey, Kuwait, Colorado, my home state, the Republic of Canada stand, Baltimore, Maryland, and more over on Instagram. You guys are great. Let's jump right in. So I saw this article pop up from our friends over at Valuetainment yesterday, late last night in the evening, and was just sadly not shocked, but still floored at how ridiculously ass backwards our government has become in the United States of America in 2024. And the headline popped up on my Instagram feed as I was scrolling last night, as I do before I went to sleep. And it just strikes me as the latest in a series of very targeted decisions from our federal government to go after, to identify, to target, and to silence anyone who is critical of the government or critical of authoritarian leftism in society by labeling you as a domestic terrorist. So this was the headline that popped up on my Instagram from our awesome friends over at Valuetainment, who cover some great underreported stories, that the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are going to be partnering with gaming companies to fight what they are calling extremist gamers. And we're going to go through the whole article together, but just that on face value should be beyond ridiculous to you, that our federal government specifically wants to target people playing video games because you playing a video game might make you a violent extremist, rather than paying attention to, I don't know, or taking action on, I don't know, any other actual concrete problem of extremism in our society, of which there is no shortage to pick from. These are not like new concepts that radical extremism does exist. But why, for the love of all that is good, is our government hellbent and intent on labeling anything that's not actually extremist as extremist and anti-government, and somehow radicalizing people to be against national security interests? But people who are actually harming national security are totally fine, are mostly peaceful, are newcomers to our society. I cannot wrap my head around why the FBI has said virtually nothing over the last several years about the crisis happening at our southern border, about actually taking action to prevent mass shootings at schools, which every single time it comes out, oh, the FBI had seen their posts on the internet for years, but done nothing. The BLM riots that destroyed entire inner cities that still have yet to build back. Sorry, I don't mean BLM riot. I should have said mostly peaceful protest. The mostly peaceful protests that destroyed entire cities 4 years ago that still have yet to fully rebuild. Hordes of Free Palestine protesters blocking bridges and freeways and opportunities for people to safely get to work. Rampant drug trafficking in our country, where opioid overdoses are among the leading causes of death for almost every single age demographic. Trafficking of kids, because that's been a massive problem, with the United States being the number 3 highest demand country in the world for child sex trafficking and human trafficking. Why does the FBI say literally nothing, virtually nothing about any of these topics on any given basis? They're certainly not taking action about any of these topics on any given basis, but they have told us over the last couple of months that parents, moms and dads testifying at school board meetings are violent domestic extremists. They have told us that Catholics who regularly go to Mass on Sunday and who prefer the Latin Mass are violent domestic extremists. And now they're trying to tell us that people who play video games might be domestic extremists, bringing violence into the United States of America. So don't take my word for it. Let's see what the actual government has to say about this. The Valuetainment article that covers this story specifically cites a Government Accountability Office report about why we need to be countering violent extremism inside of the video game industry. And I'm sorry for laughing, like it's just this ridiculous, but for the record, in case you guys are watching from abroad, because I know we have a whole lot of people who are watching not from the United States, just for the record, the Government Accountability Office does just about anything but keep the government accountable. For example, it was the Government Accountability Office a few years ago during the disastrous, complete dumpster fire of our pullout from Afghanistan that literally couldn't keep track of weaponry and high surveillance military technology that we, the United States, left behind in Afghanistan, which was their literal job to keep the government accountable. Couldn't keep track of any of that, but they do have the time to write an entire published report on how violent extremism is permeating the video game industry in the United States of America and how we desperately need more government regulation and more government surveillance of it. So because I was fascinated to learn what the government was actually saying from this Valuetainment article, I jumped over to the Government Accountability Office coverage of this. And this was published on January 31st internally for the government. It was publicly released at the end of February, and the title of this report is Countering Violent Extremism. The FBI and the DHS, that's the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Homeland Security need strategies and goals for sharing threat information with social media and gaming companies. So it turns out they're actually interested in policing far more than you guys playing GTA 6 or anyone playing Modern Warfare or whatever the new game, I think it's Hellfire, that everybody's so obsessed with. My fiance keeps talking about it all the time. Or even your friendly Toad avatar playing Mario Kart. They're actually going to start policing your social media as well as your gaming behaviors. Here's what they have to say about it. Domestic terrorists pose a significant threat to the United States, according to the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. Notice how they're not defining domestic terrorist. They have no interest in telling you where all of the domestic terrorism is happening in our country. Is the domestic terrorism in the room with us, U.S. government? Because I'm pretty sure it is, but it's not what you and I are talking about. They're not the same thing. There's absolutely domestic terrorism happening, but it's walking across our southern border, and it's happening with the blockage of U.S. freeways and bridges to try to free Palestine, and it's happening with the rampant violence happening in America's inner cities called mostly peaceful protests. But they would say the domestic terrorist posing a significant threat to the U.S. is me. Hi, I'm your friendly neighborhood domestic terrorist, apparently. I love that scene in Parks and Rec, which is one of my all-time favorite shows, of when Leslie and Ben are super drunk at somebody's wedding. And he starts giving a speech and he's talking about being married, and she goes across the bar, "It's me, he's talking about me." Yeah, literally, it's me that they're trying to call a domestic terrorist. They say domestic terrorists often use online platforms such as social media and gaming to communicate radical ideas to a wide audience and mobilize like-minded people. So if you're trying to change somebody's mind about, I don't know, a complete lack of government accountability or a healthy distrust in some of the public institutions that are shoving an ideology down your throat come hell or high water, you are using a platform to communicate a radical idea and mobilize like-minded people in the process. And that is a direct threat, apparently, to the United States government. The Government Accountability Office says the FBI and DHS have some tools for sharing information with and receiving information from social media and gaming companies on threats related to domestic terrorism. But neither agency has developed strategies and goals related to such information sharing efforts. We recommend that they develop these strategies and goals. Basically, large-scale overview. We don't have to read the entirety of this extremely boring government report because if you're unlike me and you didn't work in the legislative branch and the executive branch, reading government reports is probably the least favorite thing on your hierarchy of ways to spend your time. I personally love reading government reports, so I read through this whole thing, but I'm going to share with you just some of the highlight overviews on what this suggestion from the government for other parts of the government to police you further looks like. They said that the Government Accountability Office found that domestic violent extremists use social media and gaming platforms for several purposes, including 1, to reach large, wide audiences, 2, to insert their extremist ideas into the mainstream. Extremist ideas like, go to church, and it's okay not to trust your government, kids, and freedom of expression should still be a constitutional right in 2024, and to radicalize, recruit, and mobilize others. Experts noticed that violent extremists generally used a variety of platforms for different purposes because they have different features, audiences, and content moderation practices. The GAO did this study specifically because in recent years, they think content on social media and gaming platforms that promotes domestic violent extremism has influenced several high-profile attacks, according to experts and agency officials. As a result, some social media and gaming companies, as well as federal agencies, are making an effort to understand and address online content that promotes domestic violent extremism. So this all gets covered in the news by Valuetainment, not by the mainstream media. They have no interest in helping to spread this story because the more they try to discredit social media and independent creators, the better off they likely will fare with existing legacy cable TV programs, radio, print media, etc. They don't want any competition in the space from you guys getting your information from people like myself or Brett Cooper or Charlie Kirk or whoever you are wanting to watch. So I'm reading through this coverage from Valuetainment, and they end up sharing the different categories that the Government Accountability Office already has in existence for what they call violent extremism. And I find this so eye-opening and honestly very telling with what the government is doing to say the quiet part out loud in a very nuanced way. This little graphic was put together on the GAO report that we were just reading, that there are 5 distinct groups the U.S. government currently has identified as violent extremism. First would be racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. They call these people domestic violent extremists with ideological agendas derived from bias, often related to race and ethnicity, held by the actor against others or a given population group. Some domestic violent extremists purport to use both political and religious justifications to support their racially or ethnically based ideological objectives and criminal activities. So if you do something violent or you commit a crime that specifically is about race, you are a government violent extremist. But they refused. The FBI or the DHS refused to label any of the mostly peaceful protests over the last few years that were all centered around race or ethnically motivated incidences as extremism. Instead, they called them mostly peaceful protests and don't arrest anybody when they burn small businesses to the ground. They don't arrest anybody when they destroy churches or public property. They don't arrest anybody when they paint things on sidewalks that specifically center around racially or ethnically motivated incidences. They let that slide because that's kosher in society, but it's not otherwise. What immediately comes to mind for me is the perfect example of the double standard that exists in this first category. In the summer of 2020, when all of the BLM riots were happening all over the United States and most inner cities were experiencing some level of widespread public property damage, private property damage, and violent crime, there was this trend, this fad that a lot of the BLM rioters were doing in painting the words Black Lives Matter on public streets, on the sidewalks. They were doing everything they could to just paint that phrase literally everywhere. And that exact same year, a group of pro-life activists in Washington, D.C. picked up some sidewalk chalk, not paint, something that could wash away with one hose spray of water, and wrote outside on a public sidewalk near an abortion facility, Black preborn lives matter. Those individuals were federally arrested and charged with multiple crimes, immediately painted as violent extremists. And I know several of those people that have been fighting legal battles now for years over this stuff. But if you are racially or ethnically motivated based on what the government wants you to do right now, you are not an extremist, and we will certainly not take any government action against you. So that's category number one. Category number two is glaring, like perhaps the most obvious, say the quiet part out loud thing that they possibly could have said. Anti-government or anti-authority violent extremism. Domestic violent extremists, these are these people, with ideological agendas derived from anti-government or anti-authority sentiment, including opposition to perceived economic, social, or racial hierarchies, or perceived government overreach, negligence, or illegitimacy. In other words, if you protest, if you say something publicly that is anti-government, that is critical of the people in positions of power, or even critical of authority structures in the society that you live in, you are a violent extremist, and we are going to target you with the full force and might of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Homeland Security. Even if you're an American citizen, even if you're exercising your constitutional rights, guaranteed by the First Amendment to criticize people in power, which is the First Amendment for a reason in our Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, doesn't cut it anymore in a 2024 America that we are continuing to build and abuse our power for. And I'm not much of a gamer, I'll be honest. I don't play a whole lot of video games. I love playing Hogwarts Legacy, and I'm a big Nintendo girl, so that's where I'm at. But like, sorry to correct me if I'm wrong, everybody in the chat, aren't a lot of these games based on the idea of anti-authoritarianism, of a distrust of government, of what happens when the government gets too powerful? Look at The Last of Us, which was a wildly successful gaming franchise well before it was turned into a TV show. The entire game is based on the foundation that the government got way too powerful, that authoritarianism quickly became the norm, and that people somehow need to rebel against this because the government doesn't have people's best interests at heart. Like, literally, you could come up with a million different game examples in the gaming world over why we should be critical and at least somewhat distrusting of government institutions and agencies and authority structures in society. Not only is that what the United States of America as a country was built on, but literally every single one of our favorite stories, not just in gaming, but even the entertainment industry, are also based on that reality. So good luck when you're playing games like The Last of Us. You can't even say, I agree with the storyline of this game, because all of a sudden you're going to be labeled a violent domestic extremist by your own government for doing so, which is just beyond the pale to me. And just as a reminder, these suggestions extend beyond the gaming world into your conduct on social media as well. What types of videos you're saving, posting, reposting, reacting to, etc. Then it expands a little bit further. They say animal rights or environmental violent extremism, which I find interesting because that's basically like eco-terrorism. They're saying that's a problem, but they're not really taking a lot of action on that, despite eco-terrorism becoming a lot more normalized in society. This one hit home for me. Abortion-related violent extremism. They say there are domestic violent extremists with ideological agendas related to abortion, including individuals who advocate for violence in support of either pro-life or pro-choice beliefs. I'd believe it when I see it, federal government, because I don't know, right after Roe v. Wade was overturned in June of 2022, people like my friend Gracie's office were completely ransacked, destroyed, bricks thrown through the window, buildings set on fire, etc. by mostly peaceful pro-abortion protesters who were just exercising their rights to wreak havoc on society because something didn't go their way politically. But then people are trying to make the exact same argument that that's not violence, but people peacefully praying outside of an abortion facility is in fact an act of violence. So just like this idea of the racially motivated violent extremism that the government is targeting, I have a really hard time believing you are equally applying your standard to every single situation. It feels more, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm speaking from personal experience here, like you're weaponizing the federal government to fit your agenda to specifically go after people who are pro-life in this particular situation and to never take action against actual acts of violence by these radical pro-abortion people who are threatening pro-life individuals. They are punching and hurting and assaulting pro-life individuals. They're destroying buildings and churches in the name of protecting abortion rights. But none of that is violence. None of that remotely crosses the line into what's appropriate in society or not, or even illegal. It's only violence, specifically when it happens to be pro-life. And then they have to create this entire umbrella category for their last of the 5 categories of violent extremism. We've done number 1, racially and ethnically motivated extremism. Number 2, anti-government or anti-authority violent extremism. Number 3 was animal rights or environmental violent extremism. Number 4, abortion-related violent extremism. And now number 5, the big umbrella, all other domestic terrorism threats. And read how they categorize this one with me. These are domestic violent extremists with ideological agendas that are not otherwise defined under or primarily motivated by one of the other domestic terrorism threat categories. Such agencies may combine personal grievances and beliefs with political concerns and aspects of conspiracy theories, as well as bias related to religion, gender, or sexual orientation. You know what that part tells me? That's literally anything else that the government wants to label as extremist, even if it's not actually extremism. And I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. I'm not saying that to just make something up on the fly. I'm saying that because, as a reminder, over the last couple of years, we have watched our federal government specifically go after innocent Americans who have done nothing wrong and, in fact, been exercising their constitutional rights and label those people as an umbrella domestic terrorists, radical extremists, people who deserve to be arrested for living their life in a legal, innocent, constitutional manner. And there is rampant evidence for this all over the place. The obvious one that we've talked a lot about here on the stream, because I am Catholic, shocking. Not news if you didn't already know that, but I talk about it all the time. The Catholic News Agency reported on this in December. But this is not new information. For the last several years, there have been documents coming out from whistleblowers that the FBI is issuing reports targeting Catholics for attending Mass. That if you go to church every Sunday, and they say if you go every Sunday, you are much more radical than people who only go occasionally. If you go to church every Sunday and you exercise your First Amendment right to practice your religion freely, you are a direct threat to the United States of America. You pose danger to our national security because you are a radical traditionalist. That's what they started calling Catholics going to Mass, especially those who prefer the Latin Mass a few years ago. You are a terrorist. essentially, which has been hugely eye-opening for people across the religious spectrum, by the way, not just people who say that they're Catholic, but anyone who wants to freely practice their religion, because if they want to start with Catholics going to church, of which there are millions upon millions of them living in the United States, they will come for your denomination of Christianity or your religion next. For God's sake, look what's happened over the last 7 months or so related to Judaism in America, where they're telling Jews, do not practice freely. Do not wear a Star of David necklace. Do not make it known publicly that you are Jewish, especially on your college campus, or there will be huge problems. But those people aren't violent extremists. Those people aren't domestic terrorists. You actually are, if you're trying to exercise your First Amendment right. I read something the other day, unrelated to the US, but there was this huge report that London, the city of London, is telling Jews not to come to London. Do not live here. Do not come here. It is for your own safety, because we can't guarantee that you will be able to survive, which sounds like something out of the 1930s, but sadly is the reality in 2024. And no government action is taken on actual acts of violence. It's always the other way around. Even outside of religion, the FBI has come under extreme heat for the last several years because, at the bequest of our current president of the United States, Joe Biden, the FBI has been targeting parents, investigating parents, arresting parents who have shown up to testify at their local school board meeting on behalf of their child and the curriculum that their child might be learning at school every day, be it these pornographic books that are found in elementary school libraries all over the country, absolutely insane gender ideology that might be taught by their child's teacher in their elementary, middle, or high school classroom, these radical stories that you're hearing where kids are getting bunked on school trips with children of the opposite gender and the parents aren't informed about it, or even their child being encouraged to transition at school behind the parents' back. These are all very, very real realities for families all over the United States. And instead of identifying potential problems of child safety at school, the FBI, and specifically the President of the United States directing the FBI, has chosen to target the parents as these radical, violent, domestic extremists. This was published way back in March of 2023 when there was a report issued by the House Judiciary Committee saying that the Attorney General had issued this memorandum directing federal law enforcement to root out a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators stemming from contentious school board meetings. But the House found that there was no legitimate basis for this type of targeting of parents. Essentially, that they were just making crap up in order to try to lobby support from the public, from the government, from members of our U.S. Congress, and from law enforcement agencies all over the country to target the parents instead of the people actually putting children at risk all over the United States. And I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to a lot of these stories about parents, but there have been countless parents who have been arrested, forcibly removed from school board meetings. Some parents are even losing custody of their children over a lot of this gender ideology stuff, not in the places that you would expect, but in places like Montana, where this type of ideology is reigning supreme. Again, nobody is questioning the potential motives or the potential extremism happening inside the classroom. They're going after parents who want to protect the innocence of their children. Just the other day, we've talked about how libs of TikTok, by reposting videos already out there on the internet from absolutely insane individuals who say that they want to force your kids to transition, who say that they want to sexualize kids, who say that it's completely normal for adults to be attracted to children. I have to be careful how I say that on some of these platforms. Those videos are already out there. Libs of TikTok just decides to repost those videos, and she gets targeted by law enforcement as this domestic terrorist that is wreaking havoc all over the United States of America and putting people at risk. But the people who made those videos in the first place are totally fine. So you tell me, chat, if you're seeing the exact same pattern of behavior here, but I'm clocking a pretty regular occurrence here, as I've been tracking this over the last several years, of our government using all of the right language, saying all of the right things to make you think that they are going to protect you, that they are going to keep you safe, that they are going to root out all of the insanity from our society that 100% exists. But then they're taking this pathway to do that they've created in the name of protecting society, and they're using it to target the opposite people from who really need to be investigated or arrested or at least questioned for their motives to destroy the United States and destroy our nation's culture. It is ludicrous and asinine to me that these people would rather spy on you playing Grand Theft Auto or Fortnite or Modern Warfare because you are the radical in society. They would rather do that than go down to our southern border and arrest actual gang members, actual terrorists coming from the Middle East across our southern border every day. Actual criminals who will kill college students going out for a run on our college campuses. They have no interest in doing that, but they want to spy on you playing Mario Kart in your living room. The FBI refuses to prevent the next mass shooting at your local high school or elementary school, which seems to happen like clockwork pretty regularly, and it always comes out after the fact that we knew all along. We saw all of these posts all along. We knew something like this was bound to happen, but we just couldn't do anything about it. They'll never do anything about that, but they'll spy on you using animated fake guns playing Call of Duty, which, by the way, I'm sure is coming next. Like, if the government is really serious about rooting out extremism, they certainly can't let you play games with animated guns because that normalizes shooting things in people's minds. This is the type of slippery slope that these people are trying to institute right now. They'll do nothing about the illegal trafficking of guns across our southern border, but they'll say, you played a game with animated guns today? I think we need to arrest you for violent domestic extremism. They'll do nothing about the people setting inner cities on fire, destroying small businesses, punching shop owners in the face, stealing thousands of dollars of merchandise, destroying cars. The whole enchilada. They will do nothing. They will call that mostly peaceful behavior. But if you drive a car too fast in Grand Theft Auto, you are the real problem in the United States of America. You are the violent domestic terrorist. They will do nothing. Say nothing. In fact, they will remove entire sections of their website related to the trafficking of children, which happened a few years ago. And they'll say that anybody who goes to watch movies like The Sound of Freedom are these crazy QAnon conspiracy theorists. They won't do anything about that, but they'll be really upset with you if you happen to play Hogwarts Legacy and learn the Avada Kedavra curse in your living room and pet cats and ride hippogriffs. You are the problem in the United States of America. I mean, honestly, what on earth is wrong with these people? How far are we willing to let it go? If they can tell you that anti-government or anti-authority sentiment, if having distrust for public institutions, if you have opposition to perceived economic hierarchies or perceived government overreach, that makes you a violent extremist, they are not going to stop at spying on you playing video games. They're not going to stop at looking at your posts on Instagram and what you saved on TikTok. These people will do anything to justify taking away your constitutional rights to criticize the people in power so that they can retain power for themselves. Period. Full stop. It's why, if you're really ideologically consistent about a lot of this stuff, the idea of the federal government banning the largest social media platform for Gen Zers in America, TikTok, which they are literally debating right now on Capitol Hill. They have a vote on this tomorrow morning. The idea of that should at the very least make you stop and have the hair on the back of your neck stand up and think, why? Why that platform? When we know every other social media platform has sold your data to the CCP, when we know Airbnb has sold your data to the CCP, when we know that China manufactures every single one of our electronic devices, like if they really wanted your email address, I'm pretty sure China already has it. So what is it about TikTok that warrants a bipartisan, rare in and of itself, assault on the largest, most effective social media platform for our generation? Maybe it's because we've been criticizing the government more authentically and more honestly on that platform than we could on any of the other ones who are in bed with the United States government. It's not coincidental to me that they're going after the one platform. They can't call up and say, hey, censor every single post related to this one topic. And we know now, the government has come forward and reaffirmed now that, oh yeah, we did ask Meta to censor everything related to the Hunter Biden laptop story. We did ask Twitter to take down any post related to COVID treatment. That's unfortunate, but we can't do that with TikTok, so it's gotta go because national security. This should make you furious. And at the very least, wildly concerned about the motivations behind the people that we have elected to represent our best interests in supposedly our representative democratic republic. Newsflash, they are not representing your best interests. They are weaponizing the size and scope of our own government to come after you by any means necessary, even if it's covertly having your FBI agent spy on you playing Hogwarts Legacy in your basement, which I'm sure is exactly what is happening to me. So as I always say, I'd like to think that my FBI agent is very cute and handsome, and he at some point gets a kick out of the things that I say. I hope you're watching, buddy. But it's not just going to be public figures. It's not just going to be people with large platforms. In fact, more likely, it's going to be you and your mom and dad and your brother and sister and your best friend and the people that you live with on your college campus. It's coming for you. So we got to stand up about it. We got to do something about it. We can vote new people into office. We can post about this stuff to change the tide of public opinion, to make a difference politically later on down the road. We can encourage other people to be more informed by sending this live stream to somebody or sending that government accountability report to somebody that you know and care about. Please look it up for yourself. In fact, I will drop the link right now to that GAO report in our chat so that you guys can go learn more about it for yourself, because an informed citizenry, an active citizenry, a citizenry on offense, people who care and get involved in the process, those are the people that are impossible to snuff out. Those are the people that are impossible to silence. Those are the people that can still have control over their governance. But if we sit down, if we say, it doesn't really matter, what's really going to happen? They're not really going to watch me play Fortnite and hear all of the insane things that I say to my friends. Guys, I hear what you say, okay? My fiance plays Fortnite all the time with his buddies. If they really come after you for what you say when you play video games, if the party chats get released, you are all cooked, is all I'm gonna say. I hear you boys and what you're saying, so watch out. But it's not gonna stop there. It's going to get so much deeper if we don't stand up and fight back today. So do that, please. I'm seeing a lot of people come through in the chat and say, what did I miss? What did I miss? What is the topic? In case you guys are coming in towards the tail end of the stream today, please go back and rewatch. We unfortunately can't keep the live stream up on Instagram for whatever reason when we do it through the web browser, which is how we can stream at the same time with all of our other platforms. But you can always go back and rewatch the stream on YouTube, on Facebook, on Rumble, etc. Before we go today, I want to remind everybody that starting next week, I am embarking on a nationwide book tour, which I'm super, super excited about. It's going to be an opportunity to meet me in real life, to get your copy of my book, which hopefully you all pre-ordered already, signed, and for me to get to know you guys, which is the greatest honor of my lifetime. We have literally so many stops already planned, including for media and podcasts, but also for some speaking engagements. So if you guys have a school group, if you have a church group, if your business, if your local conservative party, if whatever wants to be added as a stop on my book tour, please, please, please email me. You can find my email on literally any of the platforms that we are streaming on right now. It is super easy, and we would love to get you guys added to the schedule so that you can be a part of our nationwide book tour. We have a couple of slots open, and we want to make sure we fill as many of them up as possible. Please do me a huge favor today and send this stream to somebody that you know that really needs to understand what the heck is going on with our own federal government and the fact that you are probably America's next most wanted violent extremist. And before we close everything out today, do me a huge, huge, huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching to help us continue to organically grow these channels one day at a time. Love you guys so, so, so very much. Off to go film many more podcast interviews. I've done like 12 in the last 2 days. So if my voice seems a little scratchy, that is why. But we are on Book Media Central. So I've been doing a whole lot of stuff. Most of you guys have probably watched the Michael Knowles interview that is doing really well on YouTube, which is super exciting. But we've done the Hollywood in Toto podcast. We did the Hopeful Majority podcast. We did Brandon Tatum and Michael Knowles and all kinds of people in the last couple of days. And we're doing a whole lot more in the next couple of days too. So we got to go record all of those things. But we will be back for the stream tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. And on Thursday, we're going to be doing a morning stream because Thursday afternoon, I'm going to be attending the PragerU Gala up in Palm Beach, which will be very, very, very fun. We are going to do a very long Q&A on our locals community tomorrow. I promise we have some built-in time in our schedule for that then, but appreciate all of your guys' help and cheering me on and support in all things related to book media. You guys are the best. I love you so much, and we will be back tomorrow.